12 hacks of Christmas, squash Wellington. Now this recipe is beautiful. It's not like other veggie Wellingtons that you've possibly had, you know, full of lentils and go all flat. We use the whole neck of the squash. So when you cook it, it sort of stands proud. And when you cut into it, you've got this beautiful circle of orange squash that's staring back at you. The flavors in this, so it's combined, you've got the lovely nuttiness of the squash. We've got wild mushrooms, we've got normal mushrooms, we've got dates, we've got onions, pine nuts. Loads of herbs, so it's full of flavour. If you're not a big fan of nut roast, then try this instead as your centrepiece for your Christmas dinner or any other roast dinner throughout the year. As I'm sure you remember from our squash special, if you haven't seen it, go back, check it out. Butternut squash are perfect for this sort of recipe. Because of the amount of flesh in the neck, the seed pod's just at the bottom. It's not running all the way through like other squashes. So we've got this really sort of meaty, chunky bit of squash, which is really, really perfect for this recipe. So first thing, peel your squash. Now butternuts are quite easy to peel with a peeler like this. As I've said before in other videos, the skin is perfectly edible. The reason we're peeling it is more of like a textural thing now. We don't really want a slightly tougher layer just under the crunchy pastry. It just will, you know, it won't sit well. I'm just peeling the neck. In this, we're not actually gonna use the base of the squash. So I'm keeping the skin on because then it'll last in the fridge a bit longer until I use them for another recipe at a later date. You don't have to be too precious about getting all the skin off, but like I said, the better you do, the better. The better you do, the better. That makes sense, doesn't it? You want to choose your squash quite carefully for this because butternuts come in like a range of different sort of shapes and sizes, and some of them all like squat and what's the other word? Jolly shaped squashes. Don't have much of a neck, so you want to choose one with a nice neck. So imagine your Wellington's rolled up and it's this big lovely log, so you want the neck to be the center of that. So you want to get them as long as possible. Cut the neck, and then you've just got this perfect sort of chunky bit of squash that's just going to be excellent in the middle of this Wellington. So we peeled the squash, we've cut them down, I've rubbed some olive oil, some salt and some pepper just to get that seasoning into there, and then in a hot griddle pan we're just going to char the outsides. Now this will take a little while to get nice char marks all around, so whack it on and then we can start preparing what we're gonna do next. Keep in mind on the squash, I'm gonna get my mushrooms ready. So these are chestnut mushrooms, they're delicious, they've got like a deep sort of nutty, earthy flavour. We want to just roughly chop them nice and small, so not in neat little slices, just get your knife and just run them over nice and quick. And then run it over again. So you just got these small chunks. Remember, this is gonna be like a stuffing and we're gonna cook them down quite a lot, so you really don't have to be too precious about how you cut them. So next we've got our dried mushrooms. So this is a mix of oyster, we've got some pink oyster, we've got some shiitake and some porcini. You can buy these, they're readily available. There's really good places producing really good organic mushrooms around the UK. Soak them in water. That will really sort of hydrate them, and then you just need to take them out. You squeeze off the excess juice, get them on the board, and then chop them up. The classic ingredients of the duxelles are mushrooms, butter, garlic and onion. So that's exactly what we've got. We're obviously with a few sort of Brucey bonuses as well. We've got some dates to make it a little bit sweeter. We've got some pine nuts for that lovely sort of, I always describe it as like bready, nutty texture taste, which I really enjoy. So get your butter in your pan, get it sizzling, and then we want to fry off the onions nice and slow. We want them to get really, really soft. We don't want them to brown too much. So get your onions in. See, that sizzled a bit too much, so I reckon it's probably a little bit too hot. Keep an eye on them, keep them moving. Don't rush them, you should never rush onions. Let them chill out. So now the onions are nice and soft, you're gonna add the mushrooms. And on a really low heat, the thing with mushrooms, when you first put them in, they'll suck in all the moisture that's the pan. So often when you're frying mushrooms, suddenly, you know, it looks like there's no oil or butter left in the pan. But don't worry, as they cook, they'll then release the liquid, and then we're gonna turn up the heat, and we want quite a dry mix, so we're gonna bubble off that liquid. We cook down the mushrooms, they're kind of like a little bit of like a sweaty, not quite mushy enough. And you may notice you're gonna lose a lot of the kind of colour, kind of sticks to the bottom of the pan. And we really don't wanna lose that, because there's so much flavour in that. That's kind of like where all the real sort of like deep notes of mushrooms live. So what we're gonna do is called deglazing the pan. We're gonna grab some wine, and just splash it on, and that kind of lifts up all that flavour which was stuck to the bottom of the pan. And now we've added a little bit of moisture back into the mushrooms. So at this point now I'm gonna add dried herbs, I'm gonna add the mushrooms, the ones that we've soaked and then drained, and I'm also gonna add the dates, the chopped dates as well. Everything's in, and we're just gonna sweat it down a little bit more because we wanna be able to like mold it around the squash. At this point, if you just turned it off the heat, blitzed it in a food processor and then set it in the fridge, you've got mushroom pate, which is really versatile. You can spread it on toast, you can have it in your sarnies, you can dip stuff into it. Really delicious, it's definitely worth doing. After griddling these, I put them in the oven, and that was probably about 20-25 minutes at 180 degrees, because we really want them to be quite cooked, maybe 3/4 cooked all the way through, so still a little bit firm in the middle, but definitely cooked. If you don't, it'll just take too long to cook in the pastry and you'll end up burning the pastry and the squash will be raw in the middle. So definitely cook it first and look at the color. They're lovely, they're sort of golden brown. Perfect, ready to go for the next stage. Very important now, you put both of these elements into the fridge because when it comes to wrapping it with the pastry, we don't want these sort of steaming out and being too warm while we put the pastry on, otherwise the pastry will fall apart. First things you do, you roll out your pastry, layer of spinach. Now this spinach acts as like a moisture barrier to stop your pastry going soggy. Next, we're gonna put some mushroom duxelles down on the bottom and now put the squash on and then get your hands, you wanna kind of coat the squash with the mushroom mixture so it's nicely tight packed so that when you cut through, you get a nice even sort of mix of mushrooms around the squash. Put some spinach around the top for the same reason. And now when you put the top bit of pastry on, you don't want any air inside between the squash and the pastry. Overlap it, and then you want to push down to join the pastry. Now you can use a fork now to press down a little bit to make sure it's fully sealed. Be quite generous with the space around the Wellington because you don't want this pastry to shrink and create a gap. So leave quite a big overlap. Really make sure all the air's out. Now you've got it all wrapped up and snug and you press down the edges, trim off the excess pastry. So I'm leaving quite a wide pastry border here. That's because I really like it when the edges puff up because I really love puff pastry. But if you're not a massive pastry fan, then definitely trim it closer to the filling. And now get some egg yolk and just give it a little wash all over. And at this stage now, if you're feeling creative, you can put any sort of patterns in the pastry. Just make sure you don't stick your knife all the way through because we don't want any of that sort of air to escape. We want to make sure it is fully airtight. But get the egg wash on because that will just give you like a really crisp golden pastry. And now at this stage, you can put it back in the fridge to really let it firm up, or you can put it straight onto a hot baking tray and then in the oven for about 35 to 40 minutes until the pastry is perfectly cooked. So it's just come out of the oven, it's definitely cooked, it's gone golden brown. The pastry ratio is pretty outrageous, so like I said, if you don't love pastry, then definitely trim off a little bit more. But just as well, we love it here. So let it cool down a little bit, then decant it onto your serving platter and then get ready to serve. So there you have it, squash mushroom Wellington. It looks beautiful, it smells beautiful, it's like sweet, it's got a little crunchy pine nuts in it. It's like savory umami from the mushrooms with a crispy pastry. And I think it looks stunning and no one would be disappointed with that on the middle of the table at Christmas time. So definitely give it a go. The recipe's on the website. Really hope you enjoyed this Christmas veg hack. Any comments, feedback, as always, leave us a comment and let us know. Hit share and stay tuned and see what we come up with next.